It was in a socket. I came through that socket, and then I threw up on the carpet.
Exactly.
Anyway,
and it all makes perfect sense.
it all makes perfect sense, right?
I did want to give you a chance, if you want,
Sure.
to say a couple words about the book without giving things away.
The interpretation of Mulholland Drive is that the first 2 hours essentially is a dream, and the last 30 minutes is a reflection or a more accurate reality. I think if there's a core thesis under that is trying to answer the question why does it work the way it does? The history of Mulholland Drive is fascinating. That it was going to it started out as a pilot. It was going to be a television series. What's critical to know is that when it was shot as a pilot, there was an ending shot that was going to be released or perhaps on home video in the European market, just as Lynch had done with the Twin Peaks pilot. And it would have been essentially a self-contained work. When Lynch is asked whether he will turn this into a feature film, Lynch says he's going to do it, but he doesn't have an ending. And so the question is, if he already had an ending, why didn't he have an ending? And what was important to him to do? And this gets back to some of what we were talking about in Twin Peaks: The Return. My argument is the way it was structured as a pilot and the ending that he had originally filmed didn't satisfactorily convey the mind of a character. That there needed to be some psychology behind this story and an explanation for who this person was and why they would dream this dream. And that wasn't there. And he needed that. And so he needed to essentially install a character that would be present throughout the story. And that's what I tried to do. So so I have some early chapters about theory and about the history of the show and what Lynch was struggling with. And then I present the idea that he landed upon this idea that this was going to be a reflection of a mind of someone who'd been through some uncomfortable situations, perhaps some of them their own fault. And then he was going to, and then what I do is I take the whole film, but particularly that first 2 hours, and show how it reflects the mind of this character, this Diane Selwyn. And what Lynch does, I had the advantage of seeing Lynch's original pilot, not the butchered cut,
cool.
but the actual 2-hour pilot. And with some care, I'm trying not to give too much of that away, because I know Lynch doesn't want people to know what some of the content of that was, and I want to respect that. But I do know what some of his editing choices were and how those choices help reflect his new approach to the story. And then that's the book.
Very cool.
What just quickly though, do you get at all into the role of the cowboy, or do you get into the role of the grandparents, or the elderly?
Yeah, for sure. They're critical, more so than the cowboy. By far, the two elderly. So they
don't say too much, but I'm just curious.
Okay, yeah, no, I mean, I will just say this.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I will just say that they were in the original pilot in one scene at the airport. When he comes back to make the film, he adds 3 scenes with them. The first is the prologue. They're with her at the jitterbug contest. The second is in the limo as they're driving away from the airport laughing. And then the third, of course, is the famous little figures that attack her at the very end. And I go into some detail as to what they represent to Diane Selwyn and why they appear as they do. It's crucial to her character.
It's been a while since I've seen it, like maybe a year or two, but it's terrifying, them in the car just kind of laughing in that way. It's like one of the scariest things in the whole movie is just that shot of them laughing in the car.
Yeah, and I saw Mulholland Drive when it came out in 2001, and up until last year when I was writing, I had an interpretation of what that meant, and I changed it. I changed it as I wrote. I was like, oh, I really think it's this now. And so well, I will tell, my first interpretation is that I thought Diane and dreaming them as malevolent figures who steered her toward this terrible ending. That was my take on it, and I changed my mind on that.
And we'll learn that when we get the book.
Yeah.
I could tell you now, but I don't. I mean,
I think don't.
Okay, sure.
I would like to encounter that while reading. That's just me personally, but
yeah,
Tamler can contact you on the side.
Sure. You know, it's my favorite David Lynch film, and I guess, yeah, I don't want to talk on and on about it because you guys have other things to do. But back in the day when we were doing Wrapped in Plastic magazine, Craig and I had the opportunity to interview Naomi Watts, Justin Theroux, Laura Herring, and then a couple of smaller part actors, Richard Green, who played the magician, and Gino Silva, who played Cookie, and he's also the MC at Club Silencio. And I had those interviews, and they weren't available. And the interviews with the main actors, I felt were really good, and I just wanted to kind of get them back out there. But I knew I couldn't just print the interviews, and I knew also that I couldn't print the review we did of Mulholland Drive because I was not the main author on that. That was Craig Miller who wrote that, and I wasn't going to print his work. So I wrote a brand new, which of course I had the benefit of 20 years now of thinking about it. I wrote a much more really in-depth analysis of the film, and so the interviews have been printed already many years ago, although they're hard to find. But the rest of the book is brand new. It's all new writing from me.
Cool. I think we're looking forward to it, and I'm sure we speak for many. Very quickly, when you talked about the elderly couple in the car, in the taxi cab, I think, I just got a thought that maybe that's how Alice Tremond looks after closing the door, because they're both very, very polite and almost like supportively polite, when face to face with the main character. And then maybe she closes the door and she gets that. That's a
great point. I would love to think about what Alice Tremond did when she closed that door. Yeah. Given if she is Alice Tremond, which is one of these convenience store entities, who is probably more of a malevolent entity if you look at the history of that character. Was she cackling with delight that she kept Cooper from coming through the door? Yeah. I do speculate a little in my book that she's just there to kind of postpone the end, try to hold it off. So who knows? That's a great question.